Welcome, everyone. We are the online community meetup, hashtag OC Tribe, and you are here in TechSoup. For those of you who don't know TechSoup is a nonprofit that helps other nonprofits with their technology. You can read about TechSoup on these walls, and we have some brochures. I work for a division of TechSoup called Caravan Studios. What Caravan Studios does is we build apps for social benefit. We have 3 in the marketplace. They are apps for survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking. They're the apps to help shelters find alternate shelter. So they're apps for nonprofits that serve survivors of human trafficking and domestic violence. We have another app that helps locate free meals for youth in the summer months. And we have a third app that helps deploy known volunteers for time-sensitive urgent tasks like emergency response. And you can learn about our apps at caravanstudios.org. And you can follow us on Twitter at caravanstudios.org or also at Safe Night app, which is our domestic violence and human trafficking app. So those are the organizations that I work for. I am Susan. And this is a volunteer-run meetup, the San Francisco Online Community Meetup, hashtag OC Tribe. As soon as Molly switches over the slide right here, you'll see that all the tweets will be streamed here. So if you are tweeting along, you can follow the tweet stream and join in on this projected slide right here. And I wanted to do a shout out to our sponsors to thank Higher Logic and Salesforce Community Cloud and Lithium for helping to sponsor Molly's time to be our live streaming tech, and also the food, and to thank Iron Cactus. So we have this great meetup, and we also, it went away. We also have all of these live streams are recorded on our YouTube channel, and they're edited so that you can see them later, and they're very well packaged. So you can check them out later as well and learn from them. And does anyone in the room have a job to announce? Is anyone hiring? Want to make a shout out? Nope. Is anyone looking for work? Oh, you are? Okay. Would you like to? Okay.
We're hiring marketing interns, and we're hiring developers. So, yeah, would love to get contacts.
We are hiring, but not for the community team right now. But we will always be doing that later. So let's be friends.
Yeah.
Oh, at Slack, by the way. Yeah.
Same thing. We are hiring mostly interns and developer relation, but technical background required.
Good audience for that.
And we at TechSoup have a bunch of internships available right now. I don't know how many. There's a couple paid positions. You can go to TechSoup careers and figure that out. We absolutely take volunteers. Anyone who wants to volunteer, please let me know, because we love volunteers as a nonprofit. So we have a couple announcements before we move into our panel. One is thanks to the nice folks at CMX, who are partners of ours and friends. There is a contest to give away a free ticket for those who are in the room tonight and those who are watching the live stream. So in order to win a free ticket to day 2 of CMX, which is November 2nd, is that correct, Molly? Yes. Yes. So, yeah, okay. So November 2nd, one free ticket if you tweet why you want to go, and you use the hashtag OC Tribe and the hashtag CMX Summit 16. Is that this year's? CMX Summit 16. And even bonus points if you tag who you want to see. So if you can fit all that in a tweet. Otherwise,
Shira Levine, you want to see me.
And it might be Shira that you want to see. But I will randomly pick a winner tonight, and I will announce it, and then I will connect you with the folks at CMX, and you'll get a free ticket to a really incredible conference, which we will all be at. This is the last OC Tribe of the year. We will be starting again 4th Wednesday in January. We may probably have a holiday party, so stay tuned on that. And I think that's all I have to say. Just tweet along, and thank you for coming. And if you showed up without signing into the meetup, please join our meetup so you can be apprised of all these announcements. And without further ado, I would like to pass the mic to Shira Levine, who is the online community consumer and enterprise founder and executive director and expert and staff of Fanchismo. She is an online community expert of a long time, and I'm going to let her introduce her panel.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm going to use this mic and then pass it. Hi, everyone. Such an intimate group. We're all in community. Everyone, please stand up and move up one row. Come on. We'll wait. Actually, all y'all, move to the front, except for Susan. Yeah. Give us a cuddle. Come on up. Great job. You're so good. You're so good. Okay. I know well, can you see us okay? Just kidding. Okay, so before I do the real introductions, I do want to give an enormous thank you and shout out to Susan, who's moving toward the door. Susan, stay there for a second. Susan is truly one of the pioneers of the San Francisco community of online community people, having chaired and started this meetup since Meetup was born a decade ago. Susan, we owe you an enormous debt. Thank you so much for giving a damn about creating community among community. I also want to recognize one other important person. In the crowd right now is a person who may be one of the first people to have had the word community in their professional title. Please stand up, Rachel McCool. My dear friend and mentor. And wait, just while Susan's standing there, just Rachel, and there's David. While Rachel is waving to everyone, guys, these are the people who can give you guidance in your work. Seek them out, link in with them, get to know them. They are lovely human beings. So I just wanted to start with that. And we'll give David some airtime at the end. Okay, very good. All right, so let's do a little bit of introduction here. As Susan said, I'm Shira Levine. I'm a strategic consultant for online community. And that means that wherever you are in the phase of building your community for your own company, I can help you. I can do that because I like to say I've been working in online community since before there was an internet. I started in the comic book industry in the 90s. Before there was an internet, when people literally had to travel through time and space to meet each other over shared passions. I worked at DC Comics, home of Superman and Batman, for all of those nerds out there. And so I started my professional career at DC Comics, and while I was there, I had such groundbreaking ideas about how we could recognize the then 60 years of comic book history as well as sell new comics, that I did what any aggressive, aspirational young person in those days did. I went to business school, and while I was there, a little trading website called eBay heard there was an MBA with collectible industry experience, and they came and got me. That was 17 years ago, and I have been delightedly making my career out of working in online community ever since. And I'm the first person, but not the only person in this room, to tell you that there is a here. You can have a long and fulfilling career working in online community. And I like to say about eBay that they were the first commercial community at scale. And by that I mean long after the transaction. So as opposed to those of you thinking about old internet, AOL chat rooms were alive, but on eBay, since it was a commercial enterprise, long after the transaction was over, eBay invited the millions of users to hang out and talk about what they cared about, whether it was rhinestone poodle pins from the 50s or consumer electronics or collectible cars. They actually created a space for that. Well, fast forward 10 years, and now we have seen, all of you in this room, the explosion of social web, and some of you may actually be primarily social community professionals. And I myself have mostly stayed in the consumer space for online communities And you can read my LinkedIn. I ran Zynga's global community of 300 million Facebook fans on 120 pages in 17 languages. So the addition of social to community has been a huge explosion. I worked in consumer until February, and I stopped, and I left my startup at the time where I was head of community, and I looked around and I thought to myself, where's the money going in Silicon Valley? Where's it going? And it looked like the money was going into 3 areas, 3 verticals: ed tech, healthcare, and enterprise software. So I spent the entire summer, like what I did on my summer vacation, trying to work in ed tech, healthcare, and enterprise software, and I'm happy to say that I did. And along the way, I met this cast of characters. And there's so much happening in enterprise community now. It's like enterprise, healthcare, and ed tech are catching up to the groundbreaking work that people like Susan and Rachel have been doing for more than a decade already. And the good news is that there is also a there. So because I collected this interesting motley crew, 2 internationals, 2 women, it's a diverse crowd, because I asked Susan if I could bring them all with me tonight so that we could talk to you about enterprise software. But before we do, I'm going to pass the mic, and I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. And here's what I want you to say: who you are, your title, and explain it if you think it needs explaining. Where you work, and explain that if you think it needs explaining. And why don't we end the mic, Julian, you can hold the mic, and then I'll start talking into this one. Okay, here we go.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Victor Kwan. So as you will soon notice, I am French. I run community marketing for Docker. As you can see, this is Docker. This is our logo. Community marketing, so different. And some people call it community. Some people, it depends. Like community is attached to very different departments. So I'm attached to the marketing department and community. So it's marketing, but also community. So it's I underline that because that is very important, I think, because like it's so community is so much more than just marketing. So Docker, what do? We so the best analogy is shipping container, but for software. So pretty much like the same benefits as a shipping container, but for software. So think about security, traceability, portability, isolation. Exactly the same benefits.
Thank you.
I love Docker. It's great. My name is Shannon Burns, and I just want to ask a quick question. How many of you here have heard of Slack? If you could raise your hand. Oh, and then there's, okay. So I won't explain. Oh, unless you don't know what it is, then I can explain. That's okay. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. I didn't see. I just blanked out. I was too excited that all of you are here. So I work at Slack, and I am the developer relations manager, which I think is a fun and weird long title. And I do all of the strategy for both internal developer communities and external developer communities, and then help everybody complete the things that need to get done and create inclusive spaces.
Awesome. I like both Dockers and Slack. So I'm Limor Albaz, and I'm the founder of PeerList. PeerList is a community for cybersecurity professionals. So most of my career has been in security. And when I got tired of it, I decided to create a community for security professionals because I figured they kind of need to help each other. Yeah, that's kind of it. PeerList stands for peer-based analyst, and the idea is that you can really use the help of your peers rather than go to analysts. And we met Shira as a consultant in community because we always want to get new ideas and kind of have somebody come from outside and say, you guys are doing it wrong. And she came in and said, you guys are doing it wrong. and we really learned from every minute we spent with her. So thank you.
I think I already forgot the 3 questions, but no, I So my name's Julian Armington. I'm from Salesforce. I actually work on our Community Cloud product team in the product marketing area. So I'm not actually a community manager myself, but I have the pleasure of being able to work with all of our customers from all over the world on their community projects and kind of see what they do. I actually got into the community management space and communities in general in a kind of a funny way. I spent the first part of my career in investment banking and sales and realized it wasn't for me for all the obvious reasons. And when I was about to quit my job and was looking to go into business school, our enterprise software analyst in San Francisco was talking to me and he said, you know, Salesforce is coming out with this really cool product called Chatter. And it's going to change the way sales teams work together. And I turned to my boss who's sitting there and I said, we should use that. And he's like, are you kidding me? That would change the way we work. And so I said, I'm going to go work there. And it worked out. I actually ended up interning in business school with the Chatter team and decided to go off and try and make my millions at a startup. And then when we were running out of money, I came back to Salesforce. So I've seen both sides of the world. Yeah, now I work with our sales teams on helping them kind of explain the value of community to our customers, as well as working with our customers and helping them kind of manage that and navigate that process of, okay, we want to create a community, now what do we need to do, what are our goals, and how are we going to be successful doing that?
Great. Okay, this mic is a lot softer, but I will project. Okay. I'm going to ask a list of questions. We're going to do that for about 20 minutes, and I know it will pique your interest to ask your own questions, so then we'll get to that. But just to warm us all up, I really want to start with Lee Moore. Last week, there was a devastating internet denial of service attack on the world. Was there something that security community could do about it? How does the security community react to something like what happened last week? Chug the wine.
Okay, so just for those who are not security people, just to kind of give you the highlights of what happened. So essentially, a bunch of what's called any device you have at home that's connected to the Wi-Fi, modems, routers, maybe your Nest temperature thermometer, or nowadays there's even fridges that are connected to Wi-Fi. Essentially anything connected to Wi-Fi, and usually it's referred to as consumer devices, could be used for conducting security attacks. The reason they can usually be used for conducting security attacks is that most of us don't really care about configuring the security settings of these devices when we buy them. You go get, if you got a lock that's a Wi-Fi lock, maybe you'll set up the password, the user and password, but typically, most people I know, they get these devices and they just connect them, they hook them up, and they're done. So in most cases with these devices, the user and the password are the default ones, and the manufacturers typically nowadays, don't take security as such a high priority just yet. And so they don't invest a lot in the security of those devices. They're usually also cheap devices. So a bunch of those devices, to be accurate, tens of millions of those devices, comprising what's called the Mirai botnet, were actually a vulnerability of those devices was exploited to conduct what's called a DDoS attack, a distributed denial of service attack. What that means is that all these devices were overloading a DNS service provider, just like an ISP kind of, a server providing IP networks translation. Look at it as really the backbone of the internet. And those servers were attacked by all these IoT devices that happen to be web cameras. The Mirai botnet is a network of DVRs and webcams that nobody ever bothered to secure. And so all these devices were essentially overloading the DYN DNS server and caused it to crash. And it just happened so that this DNS server is the backbone of, it's the DNS provider of a lot of very critical services, or big services. It's hard to call Twitter critical, but Twitter, Airbnb for me, that's kind of critical. Bill.com, a bunch of really big services that we all use. New York Times, if you read it. And so that made basically the DIN network, the DIN DNS server unusable. And you can call that attacking the internet itself, because it's really attacking a core service without which, we couldn't use those sites.
And on to the community part.
So the community part. So Purelist as a security community, what we do is we allow security professionals to consult with each other. And so, yes, there were a lot of discussions about this attack, and a lot of talk, interestingly, a lot of talks about, actually, maybe it's natural for these people, but a lot of talk about how did this happen, how could it have been avoided, and what should have the DNS provider done to prevent this. But a lot of what evolved is a lot of discussion about IoT devices, because IoT devices are really...
which means Internet of Things.
Yeah, Internet of Things devices. All these consumer devices that are Wi-Fi connected, and how we should make the manufacturers of those devices make security a priority. So there's a big call on our site, obviously, to these manufacturers to take the accountability and make security a priority. It's a difficult topic, but that's kind of the vibe of the discussions. So
Awesome.
that's
Great.
how we were used.
That's how the community got together. I smell a Wall Street Journal editorial co-written by the Purelist community, forcing the manufacturers to do a better job.
Yeah, we've had
Unlock the
many cases
UGC.
of that.
Unlock the UGC. Okay. So thank you, Limor. Now we're going to ask everybody, and I want to start with you, Victor. Well, what is community for enterprise? What is it?
Good question.
Thanks. I'm here all day. Try the tortilla chips.
Well, to me, it's not about, so like a lot of people think about community as in like what can they do for the enterprise. It's really like should be the other way around. You should think about what you can do for the community so that they can help you grow the community. So I think to me, it's really about enabling them to be successful, and that success is going to actually be the return on investment for your enterprise or your company.
Great. Why don't you pass the mic, because I'm sure Shannon has something to say about it, and also Julian too.
See, it was what is community
For enterprise.
for enterprise?
Like what is this thing?
What is this thing
A
that
lot
we're
of people
doing
know
up
what
here
community is for a consumer.
for people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what is it for businesses?
So I think it's a really interesting thing that Slack has. It's just thinking about this question, because we are a platform specifically for work, and so for I want to enable the enterprise community of developers to be successful in building apps both internally for their teams on top of Slack, so that they can work on workflows that are successful for making their lives easier and more simple and more of a joy to do every day.
Right.
So I think community is the same thing for whether it's an enterprise, just like you were getting at, and how can we create and foster that engagement within like natural communities as they form, and create those inclusive spaces to bring everybody together, and just encourage that education, the inspiring people, and supporting them.
Great.
Yeah, and really kind of building off of your answer, I think in many senses, if you think about what any business needs to do, you need to enable your own employees, you need to work with your partners, you need to work with your customers, and all of that has some sort of business goal associated with it. It might be more money, it might be doing things faster, better, more efficiently. I feel like in my world, and what I see often, community is how you can help do those things better, faster, you name it. And whether if it's Slack helping developers, or if it's another product helping customers get better service or get answers to their questions, I see it often as really, getting back to companies' business goals. Because oftentimes when we meet with companies, they'll say we really want to connect with our customers, and then you'll ask them, well, why? And they'll say, Isn't that what you're supposed to be doing these days? And it's like, well, no. I mean, if you want to, that's great, but have a goal in mind. And that's, to me, really, when it comes to enterprise community, it's kind of getting to that business goal and, using a community to help achieve those goals.
Let me ask you a question that dovetails on that. How do you determine what a business community needs or a B2B community? And how do you, in your case, Julian, how do you tell one of your customers who's creating community for its customers, so it's B2B to B, what method do you use to help them get at the strategy?
Yeah, the question of where do we start comes up all the time. And it's funny, my colleague who runs all of our community manager training programs has this great chart that is like straight out of a old consultant's textbook, but it really does a great job of getting to the point, which is basically what's going to be easy and still have business impact. Start there. And we see that all the time. So for some companies, that might be just a simple Q&A, hey, I've got a question about this product. For other companies, it might be around enabling customers to share ideas. And so really, it's kind of that cross-section of effort and impact that we see as kind of the driver where you should really get started.
So awesome. Limor, what does your community need and how do you know?
What do they need? So I started Purelist with, after having felt the pain of a typical security professional. So I knew that some of the pain was talking to other security people, but I think what we created is really something that you can see in any enterprise vertical, not just security. It could be IT people, actually it could be pharmaceutical, it doesn't really matter. One thing that was really missing for me on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook was just the ability to talk to another professional that's doing the same job that I'm doing without all the noise about a professional problem. And so there's a lot of platforms out there that allowed to facilitate some of the components. So like on Slack, I can talk to my team, right? And on Facebook, I can talk to my family and friends. And but I couldn't find a place where I could just talk about a problem I'm having right now, today, at work, that I need somebody to help me solve. And so I looked around at what these people are doing. I interviewed a bunch of them, and they said, we're going to meetups, and we're going to roundtables, and we have some LinkedIn connections. But when I have a problem right now and I need to ask a question, it's not the right thing for me. So Stack Overflow did that very well for developers, where you can really ask a question. It's become stale with the years, but it really started really well. You could ask a question and get a real answer. And I think that's something that, for me, differentiates social from community. So Twitter and Facebook, it's all social, but that's not a community. I don't look at Facebook and Twitter as community.
So you have a very intentional purpose.
It's intentional, and it's also the very professional context.
Yeah, right. Shannon, how do you start a professional community from scratch?
Oh no.
On Slack. On Slack.
Well, in all of my experiences working in developer relations and working with communities before that in tech and outside of tech, I have found that very rarely do you not have a community to start with, even if you think that you do not have a community. So I think the first place is to kind of, speaking to what you were saying, put empathy. Think about, and if you actually truly don't have a community, think about the community you want to support and why you want to build a community, and put yourself in their shoes as much as possible, feel their pain, and then go from there.
Victor, you're nodding along. What resonates for you with that?
Well, first, I want to give a shout out to David because he actually sent a very good email this morning, which I encourage everybody to read. It's like the 10 keys for building a community from scratch.
Ah,
And
Ringer. That's David in the back. Raise your hand, David. Yay. Founder of CMX. It's next week. We will see you there, all of you.
so I don't remember all the steps, but I guess I'll start with step 1. It's identify your champions. And I think what you said really resonates to me because you have, as long as you have users or maybe even just a couple, you can identify whichever like user is the most, is it feels the strongest about your product, is the most passionate about your mission, and how do you engage with that person to give him more so that he wants to give more to the community. So it's not you give him something so that he doesn't give it to you back, but so that he can give it to someone, and then that's kind of like the virtuous circle of community.
Just dovetailing on that point, I love that. And many people in the audience are familiar with my inverted funnel version of Identify Your Evangelists, which is called the Sheeramid, which I will be talking about next week at CMX. But I love the idea of enabling your most active users, and I think it's critical in your customer segmentation for your community. How do you engage the quieter people? Like, how are you going to bring the others up to engage them while you're managing the people at the top? And I know you've worked on that, so tell me a little bit about what you've done.
Well, for us, I guess to give a bit of background, so I started at Docker 3 years ago. We have a very, very small community. The product is very young and like not mature at all. And so what we did
It was just a dolphin, not a whale.
it was a baby whale. So for us, it was really just going to meetup. So it's really about offline, because you need at the beginning you need very strong links with your community, and you're not going to build those strong links online.
Right.
Wow. So to us, it was really about going out there, getting some product feedback, like trying to identify, again, identifying those champions, but not identifying them online. You need to identify the ones face to face that you want to kind of like build your community on top of, your leaders. So yeah, mostly like offline strategy at the beginning, I'd say.
Shannon, you were nodding along to that. How do you both feed the flames of the actives and ignite the rest of the people?
I was nodding at the question because I think I get really excited when people talk about things that we don't do very well. And because I want to learn and be better.
Juicy.
So,
A
yeah.
juicy one.
Oh. So in terms of like advocates, I really try to get as much exposure as I can and encourage the rest of my team and other people in the company that are not normally like developer relations people. I try to like find advocates internally first and help them like do everything they can to help me find the advocates in the community, because I think there are a lot of people that are quiet, and it's hard. But just because they're quiet and maybe they're not very extroverted doesn't mean they're not champions for you.
Great. Limor, I know you've got some loudmouths in your community. How are you both
So
managing them
start?
and getting other people to
How
participate?
did we start? So for me, we're dealing with a bunch of really smart and cynicist people. Security people are really, tough. And when we have a bug, you can see it all over Twitter. And when everything works well, it's quiet. So it's a different type of people. So we knew we have to start with something they really need. We couldn't just start with, we did continue on to the strong advocates like you talked about, Victor, but we had to start with something they need. So what we did is we actually built an algorithm that collected information about all the security products out there and their features and everything we could get about them. So when I started, I actually worked with a machine learning guy from Yahoo, Kamal, a great friend, and we built this algorithm, and we just put out there a search just to allow people, because we found that there's no place out there that actually gives you a complete directory of all that data. So I think if you want to build a community, the first thing to ask is what would be getting people to your site. And if you want to create that kind of loop where somebody puts something out there and then somebody comes to consume it, you want to start with one of the two, right? Either somebody putting some content out there or the person consuming it, and what are they looking for. So for us, we knew they're gonna like the idea that we took all these vendor data sheets and we broke them down into almost like a table, because in search you could search by a feature. We allowed you to search by anything you want. So we kind of structured everything for them. they could search. And once we got that done, we started with asking big champions in security, VIP people everybody knows. So I used some of my personal contacts, but we started with 500 people who came to the site. We wanted to have big names on the site. We wanted to be able to say, the CISO of American Express is here. You should be here. So that's something that worked for us really well. And then we had these people who were just addicted. And you really don't need more than 10 of them to start. Just a few people that are just commenting about every possible post. It seems like they don't have a job and they are just there all the time. We have people who spend way much more time than me on the website. And if you find just a few of those, just give them a call and ask them, what do they like?
Great.
What are they doing it?
Great. That's awesome. Julian, I have a slightly different question for you. How is, and this is, I think, especially relevant to Salesforce, this enormous company that does so many different approaches software sales in so many different ways with different departments. How is community different from or similar to evangelism? Is there a line in between those two things?
Well, are you talking internally within Salesforce or externally with our customers?
With the customers.
Yeah, I think for us, it really kind of, it walks a fine line. As you pointed out, not only do we interact with our customers in a number of different ways, but our community that we've built for our customers has a number of different purposes. So there's sort of the gateway drug of, how many of you have actually attended Dreamforce before? So whether you know it or
let me
not.
ask it slightly different. How many of you were stuck in traffic?
Yeah, right, sorry.
For 45 minutes last week?
I commute during Dreamforce too. Sorry. Whether you realize it or not, you're a member of our community because our Dreamforce app is built on our community. And so that's kind of like the gateway drug to getting people in there in the community without even realizing it. But then you get the people that are the power users that are constantly answering every question, like they literally know the answers to questions that our own product teams don't even know the answers to.
Incredible.
And I think for us, it really has been about kind of something you were pointing out a moment ago was really giving people what they wanted. It's one thing to say you want people to come in and talk with one another, and that's great. But we had people that wanted to give us feedback on our products, and that was one of the kind of original uses of our community.
Are business communities easier to run than consumer communities? Anybody want to take a stab at it?
I will do that.
Okay, great.
That one. In my experience, I think that enterprise software developers are harder to access. But once you get a hold of them and get in front of them, if you have a product that people love, then it's just like candy and like everybody's happy. But getting your foot into the right door is pretty challenging.
Yeah, Victor, you've talked to me about that.
I think it's the opposite,
and like you
though.
have more than one community, right? You have the person who signed the agreement, the licensing agreement, and then you have your day-to-day users. Who's the right person to foster community with? How do you pick and how do you find them?
Well, I guess before going on to that question, I can comment on your answer. I agree with you. I think the hardest part is to get developers to listen because they are spammed. Everybody wants to hire them. They just have too much noise, and so it's really hard to get them to listen and to be engaged. But once they're engaged, they are very, very. I don't want to generalize and say that every developer or sysadmin is collaborative, but by essence, especially with the Docker community, which is there's a big overlap with the Linux community. They are very, it's kind of like open source, and they love to help each other. They love to mentor each other.
Wow.
And so that is just very powerful, and that just makes my job a lot easier every day. So just love that vibe, and that's why I love my job. It's just because of that collaborative aspect to it.
And how do you find the right people to engage?
I'm just kidding.
Swag.
Just kidding.
For developer relation, I think swag is a big part of it.
Yeah.
But actually, Jamie and I were discussing about swag earlier. I don't think you want to say, if you do this, I'm going to give you that T-shirt. It's really about just whenever you truly feel that they did something good, out of the blue, you're going to give them not
Cool.
a t-shirt, but a hoodie.
Cool.
Something like that.
Shannon? Yeah.
So on that, I want to say, so I was a software engineer before I got into developer relations. And as a developer, I will say that swag can also be a very expensive mistake. So especially here, because I mean, I cannot tell you how many like rooms I could wallpaper with the shirts that I have just from going to conferences before I got into developer relations.
Wow.
So do make nice stuff if you're going to do it. Make it something that somebody doesn't want to throw away and not take up room in their bag.
Actually,
Be sure to grab your swag on the way out. Awesome.
I actually want to add to this. So first of all, yeah, if you make a swag, make it for women too. And I'm so glad there's so many women here. This is like rare in my world for sure. But actually, we had a very interesting experience. We had some users who were super helpful, and we surprised them with an Amazon gift card. And in every single case, they decided to donate it. So we had a unique problem. We could not tempt them with anything.
Wow.
Not money, not swag. If I would offer a user on Purelist $1,000 to write a post, they'd say, "I'm sorry, I don't have the time."
Incredible.
So we had a very unique problem because these people are not just making a lot of money, they're overworked. They're like literally overworked. There's, I don't know if people know, but roughly there's about 250,000 security people in the US, and there's a need for 1.5 million additional people. So imagine the workload of these people. So I cannot tempt them. We cannot tempt them with anything. So we were
Hey,
really.
Maury, I thought you were going to say there are 250,000 security people in the U.S. and their life expectancy.
Yeah, so the
62.
So the age we're serving, it's very interesting. We're serving users from age 18 to 65.
Amazing.
Which is crazy. But
Yeah.
but anyway, to make a long story short, we had to figure what is it that's going to make them want to work on their profile, their reputation, and contribute content. And we found a couple of good reasons. One is they wanted to help other people. They really wanted to help other people and also mentor newbies. They really wanted to mentor newbies. The second reason is they found that there is no way for them to build their public profile. There was no way for them to show what they know. And Purelist kind of facilitated that. So that's just kind of going back to my point about find what is it that they really need and
That's
don't have
great.
anywhere else.
Julian, you helped us understand how to launch a community, minimum effort with maximum impact. And I like that model. I saw everyone taking notes on that. Some people tweeted it even, and behind you. And now I'm wondering, do you also have a tidbit to share about how enterprise communities create culture? So like we've heard about mentoring and we've heard about the insights, like gathering insights from a small group, but like is there a playbook on creating culture in an enterprise community?
You know, I don't think there's a playbook, but I think that it's really important to have your company culture reflected in your community. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I work in marketing, and so when we were preparing for Dreamforce this year, you know, Mark Benioff tests his presentation around the country, and he goes to Atlanta and Chicago and DC and things like that. And the feedback they kept getting from people is they said, "We really like your culture. We want to see more of your culture in your presentation. We want it to be more fun." And I think our community does a really good job of reflecting that, because there's an area where you can talk about whatever technical thing that I don't think any of us are ever going to be able to understand, but there's also an area where you can figure out where the best bars are when you're at Dreamforce, or you know what you're going to do after the Washington DC World Tour event. So being able to kind of have that fun in the community, whatever it might be, has been something that's really important for us at Salesforce. And for a security community, it's going to be something completely different because it's a totally different audience. And so I think that's something that we've really focused on. And it's something we really advocate that our customers do, which is, it's not about the perfect community, it's about the perfect community for you and how that might reflect your values and kind of your company culture.
Yeah, come on. Pass the mic.
So I'm a culture nerd. This is something I love. I love, love, love. And I would say if you are a company or if you're working for a company or you're trying to build a community that is not just in one regional area, I would highly recommend looking into cross-cultural communication and thinking about how you're presenting yourself and your company externally in areas that are not of the culture you're part of. It's a big deal to create those inclusive spaces, just like you were saying, and create it from the top, from your internal, come from a place of like genuineness, from knowing and living your internal company and their culture, and being the bridge to that externally in a culturally sensitive way.
I think you're so right. If you're investing in an international product, then and the community team always is the front line to the people in, say, Germany, and they will be very happy to tell you which national holidays they want you to wish them happy whatever day, happy beer day, happy pretzel day, or whatever. They will tell you that. And if you do that, you will have, in our case of Farmville at Zynga, $1 million Germany day when we said Happy Oktoberfest. So yeah, you're so right. I love that. Victor, how have you scaled painlessly?
Yeah, Docker helps you scale your apps. Yes, shameless plug. We don't like sales pitch. No, how do we? I mean, I think there's always kind of like growing pains. Like I wouldn't necessarily call them pains, but challenges. How did we scale? I think is again leveraging the champions. So they helped us scale. They're the one that helped us really scale geographically.
Yeah. Great.
And you just need to kind of like unleash their they want to collaborate, they want to help, they want to meet other people so that they can learn from them. So it's really just unleashing that collaborative aspect that your captains or your in our case we call them the Docker captains, but your champions or whatever you call them, they are the one that you can really like rely on to scale, in my opinion.
Great. Anyone else want to talk about that? Scaling?
I'll just say hand over the keys.
Ah.
And that's the thing, like you were just saying, you can't even pay people to say thank you. Like you can't even buy them a spa day. But if you hand them the keys, like you're putting your trust in them, and that means something.
That's great. So we've talked about external champions. And Julian, I think since you're in the biggest company of all, maybe you can tell us who's your internal champion. Like championing to the community is huge, but we all know this is a nascent field, community management. Internal championing is maybe even more important. David has a statistic, something like 80% of all community strategies fail because the community manager fails to marshal the internal support. Some enormous percentage. Did I get it? A third of all strategies fail. Thank you. Still pretty big. 33%. 33%. So it's so important to have internal champion. How are you championing your community internally? Who is your biggest sponsor?
Well, so we are a unique company in that our CEO is our biggest champion.
Yeah, great.
Mark was really behind the community very early on. And so I think that's really unique amongst companies. It's interesting. I worked at a startup between when I interned at Salesforce and business school and when I came back, and it was a social business technology company, and the CEO had come from Jive. And when we had 5 customers, he was already asking, when should we build our first community?
Wow.
We have user voice now. When should we make it a community? And we had one customer support rep, and she was like, I think it's 10 customers. That's when we're building the community. And is it worth the money? We'll figure it out when we get there. But so if you have senior leadership really bought in, and we really have been blessed to do that, it's going to make a world of difference because it makes it more inherent to what you're doing. And that's probably why, Erica Cool, who I think has spoken at CMX before, and she's awesome. She created our community from scratch, and Phoebe, her disciple, is here in the audience. I know, yeah, whatever. She went to some other company I've never heard of before called Facebook. Yeah, so we've been really lucky in that sense. But yeah, getting that executive leadership is so important for actually making the community successful, getting continued investment, being able to really grow it, being able to reward the community members was an important aspect of what we did that Phoebe could tell you all about, I'm sure.
That's great.
Here, I'll pass it over.
You guys want to talk about who your internal champion is?
So for us, we actually have a couple of community managers. One of them is responsible for really doing everything it takes to bring traffic to the site, and the other one is responsible for is really measured on the level of engagement. And I find that having somebody with the sole focus of being measured on the level of engagement. So there's nothing you could do as an individual. You cannot post more. You cannot amplify more. The only thing you can do is drive other people to take action. Puts that person in that state of mind of like really thinking out of the box on what can I do to drive other people to do stuff. And we found some particular things that worked really well for us. So again, it really depends on the type of community you have, but in our case, having smart synesthete people, they really wanted to teach other people. So we figured, okay, we're going to create a book that we're going to put on Amazon, and we're looking for contributors to that book. And then we had so many people from the community saying, I want to take part in this, I want to write. Another thing was that really worked for us and turned people who were not champions into champions was we realized that there's a lot of people who are not Americans who wanted to contribute but didn't have a perfect English. And we said, you know what? Anybody on Peerless who wants to contribute content can do it. We have an editor whose sole job is to help you. And that did a lot of magic for us. The third and last thing I'll mention is we found that what works better than us asking people to do stuff is other members of the community asking them to do stuff. Right. So we created a feature that we found to be extremely effective for us, which is invite other people to engage on your own post or anybody's post. And we found that we get a lot of traffic from that. So if anybody posts something and then invites other people to come and engage and comment, they are about 3 times more likely to do it than if we ask them to engage. So, just kind of hacking it.
Great.
Add to that?
Sure.
So one thing I forgot to mention was around being able to quantify the impact of what you're doing. And that's actually something that Erica did a really good job of with our own success community, which is she was able to quantify, the customers that are in the community more often, they actually end up contributing a bigger dollar value and they buy more product and things like that. And actually, at last year's San Francisco CMX event, there was a great presentation by a community manager for a startup, and I forget her name, but it was so interesting because she was very much from the outlook of the community manager that just wanted it because she wanted to connect people. And she probably wouldn't call herself a business person. And she referred to the others, those business people out there. And you know what they want? They want numbers. Learn their numbers. Beat them at their own game. And I thought that was such a great presentation because it really, really, it hit the nail on the head. Like, you can be in this for the social of it all, but the way to get that buy-in from the execs, what they care about are the numbers.
Great.
And if you're able to quantify it, it's huge.
Shannon, go for it.
Sorry, I have strong and possibly unpopular opinions about this. So I just want to say,
Stir it up. Stir it up.
Personally, I think that when community, and it does depend on what you're doing, but I think that when your community metrics are tied to a dollar amount, it is a problem and you're doing it wrong. Because then you're doing sales, and sales should be community driven, but that's sales and not community,
Awesome.
in my opinion. I think it's an open question that's very hard, and nobody has come up with a perfect solution of how to prove business value. But if you're spending your time proving your business value to your executives, you should quit your job and work somewhere else.
Wow.
Sorry.
Let's
I-
do the
am I-
next panel on that.
Community is your business.
Let's do the next panel on
Well,
that.
then, if your community is your business, then you should definitely, your C level should be on board with community. I mean, if you're not, you know, fire
Awesome.
yourself from your job then because you're not doing it right.
Okay, unless you want to drop the mic, hand it to Victor.
I mean, I agree 100%. I think you should not be tied to a dollar amount. I think that does not mean that you should not have KPIs. Everybody should have a goal. Every program that you run, you need
Great.
to, you know, exactly, right? Success and how you can do better and how you're improving. To me, it's more about improvement than did I make my number? Did I impact the bottom line?
Great.
Yeah, so I agree with you.
I would like to ask all of you a final question, a final official question. And then we'll open it up to your questions. And that's this. What is the one call to action that you're going to tell for these fine participants today that you want them to do tomorrow? Like if you could give them your one best tip, secret of success, what is the thing you want all these folks to learn from tonight about the Docker community besides this plug? Go visit Docker. They have a Lego whale the size of that sofa in the lobby, and it's very cool.
Yeah, so we are around the corner. I'd love to, you know, welcome everybody for coffee. Just tweet at me, send me an email, whatever. The one is a very, very simple advice: is don't be afraid to ask. Like I can't count the number of times where I asked something and I was so surprised of the response. I was not expecting a positive response, but
Do you mean ask your community or ask internally for something?
both? I mean, mostly the community. It's just like if you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no.
Right.
So you got to ask, and
That's awesome.
and you know, people will actually be willing to help most of the time.
Awesome. Shannon?
Yeah, I think that's I would agree with that definitely. I would also say I think that it's very important to not underestimate the value of your internal culture and your internal community and kind of exposing that culture, because it's, you know, just like internal community is built from the founders of the company, the external community culture is built from the internal community and how you expose that.
Great. Great.
So yeah, I have so many tips, but I'll try to trim it to like one or two. I think that if community is the business you're building, I mean, a lot of companies have their community, and I mean, Jive made a business out of helping a lot of companies create their community. But if community is your business, first of all, I'd say treat it like any application. So you're a product manager, and you should track the hell out of it and check what people are doing on your site, and don't assume you know anything. And talk to your users. And I can give you 10,000 advices, but you know what? They're really generic to any product you build, whether it's community or any website. You want to know what your users are doing, what they like, what they hate, what ticks them, and what they're driven by, just like any other application. But the one thing about community is, the one tip I can give about community is make it personal. There's so many users who know about me so much more than my friends because I talk to them. And when you talk to them, they would do anything for you, really anything. And I find for me, very humbly, I'd say that was the biggest difference, just making it very personal. It's not just my business, it's kind of like another family that I'm constructing, and to make that family feel good to everybody coming in, it has to be personal. So,
Great. The one thing, Julian.
Okay, only one.
Or about, I mean, it can be more than one.
Kidding.
But the
No,
things.
so, you know, I think so often we're thinking about, you know, what we're trying to get out of the community, and whether it's the next KPI or our end goals for the community, whatever it might be. But take a step back and think about, what can I do next for the community members? What can I give them, whether it's a piece of content or a new cool feature or just simply an actual physical event that has nothing to do with the online community, but actually thinking about what you can do for the users, just totally unself-interestedly, what can I do for them, and just see what happens with it. Because I think that so often we get really centered on what can we get out of this community, or how can we grow this community, but what can we give back to the community?
Those are really terrific words to end the official part of this panel on. And now I would like to open it up to your questions, which will be official in their own way. Sure. Is the question, when do you scale? How soon in your onboarding should you engage offline? Victor, why don't you take that?
I think I already mentioned it earlier, but to me, it should be at the beginning. Again, like the value of an offline link in relationship is just so much greater than an online link. So the sooner you can get those strong link established, the sooner. I mean, and again, it's you bring offline, you bring them back online, and then so offline actually you create content. So you have before the meetup you have content to promote, and then after the meetup you have photos, you have slides, you have videos, and it's gonna feed itself. So it's not. I would not necessarily think about offline versus online, but really think about them together because they help each other.
Great. Can I just ask you to tweak that answer a little bit, or to reframe
Absolutely,
it?
yeah.
What if your community is really geographically distributed? Would you advise, well, just get the 3 people who are local? Is that good enough?
I think so. I think it's good to start with 3. Just go for coffee, and at least they'll get something out of it. Yeah, I mean.
You'll have pictures to share.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Shannon?
I think that's a really interesting question, and I want to clarify because I'm not sure that I am 100% understanding the question itself. So I'm going to assume that what this person meant was what point in the onboarding process for the person who is interacting with your product or your service, when do you welcome them into the community? Is that sort of where
I think they more meant, I've got some people.
I've got
When
people.
should I get them together physically?
Oh, they're probably already, physically instead of online.
IRL.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's also maybe consider a broad definition of IRL.
Ooh.
Like,
Okay.
having,
in real life.
yeah,
Virtual in real life. That's
yeah.
cool.
Get the little keyboard where you can make your physical. Never mind that. Having
hangout. Do a
iPads on Segways in the office.
Do a hangout. I get it. Another question from the audience. The lady in the green.
So, hi, Rachel. I work at GoDaddy, which is a
Thanks,
company that has business people using, our products and services. And I actually disagree about the metrics piece. And we're doing a lot of work right now in tying into community activity and the people that are in community into products and kind of how much they're buying. Now, I come from the place that you're at. And so I was a little bit, and I've been at GoDaddy for about a year, I was a little bit terrified of where it could go because my fear was that if it's only justified based on dollar signs, that they'll miss the value of the human relationship part. But I've come to the point now that I realize that, first of all, it helps to pay for the software because we use Lithium. So it certainly helps to pay for the software platform if we can prove the value to the company on the bottom line. And it also helps me as a community manager to add on to all of the programs and services that I want to provide to our community. So I think don't shut it out. And I also really believe that all of us are going to be held to these metrics. It's coming. It's coming, believe me. And so it's like if you put your hand up and say no, it's going to happen anyway. So I would say learn it, embrace it, and contribute to it so that you feel comfortable with it.
I love that comment, and I'll add to that. Like, I think the hybrid of these two things, both what Julian said is like once Salesforce measured what they did, boy, they realized engaged community really was selling more than anyone else, and the resistance to being accountable to revenue as the bottom line. As a manager of community teams, the main thing that I tell my people is control what you can control.
So I want to speak to that too, and actually, if it's okay.
Please
Sorry.
do.
I think you raise a lot of good points, and I want to be clear that what the comment I was trying to get at is that I think that right now in our field there is an overemphasis on having to prove your worth in your job, which takes away time from actually doing the job. So, and I think that that the reason why we want a dollar amount because dollars say something to CEOs, and I think that can be dangerous because a lot of times you don't see the dollar amount until the long tail with community. You're investing in the long-term vision, not necessarily what's going to pay off this month or next quarter. So it's not necessarily that dollars don't matter, they do, because you have to have a business, and it does matter like what type of community you're running. Like as a platform community, I want to make sure that my community people can build sustainable businesses, but I'm not worried about them having dollar amounts spend on Slack. So it's a different community thing, but you bring up a lot of great points.
So if it's okay, I'll just
Go for it.
add a point. So I'm again distinguishing because we're a community business, a business made of community, and not a community that's part of, an application that makes money. So for us, a piece that was very critical was how do we make money? Because we are a community. That's the business. There's no other business. So one of the things that we learned, and Shira, this is, I think, one of the first conversations we had with you, is how do we tell our users who are, as I mentioned already, smart, they understand that if they don't pay for the product, they are the product. They understand that very well. So it was very important for us to explain right from the start how we're going to make money. And one of my very first posts on PeerList, which was not a security post, was how are we making money? And that was about a year and a half before we even started building anything that would make money. But we had to come forth and say, we've raised millions of dollars to give you guys something. This place for you that's free. And you understand that we have to make money. And this is how we're going to make money. And it was very critical for us to come and be very transparent about how we make money. And more than anything, I'd say not only to get their support and buy-in, but also to get their advice on what do they prefer? Do they prefer to pay for something, or they prefer to be the product?
Well, also, I think when one thing I love to think about and talk about is when you speak to your community, who will always be the smartest people in the room about the thing that you do, that the more sincere and transparent you can be, you should be, the greater the trust they have in you and the longer you retain them. Because once they gave you their advice, they now give you a piece of their soul as a present. And you're holding it in a jar. That's right. They're totally invested. And they're only going to leave if you break the jar open and give it back. So now you have their trust. The question is, what do you do with it? I love the way, the direction this took. Question, wasn't there a question over here? Yeah. Go right ahead. Here, let's pass the mic.
Hi. First of all, this is a great presentation. I think I've been to many meetups, but if I can measure value per minute, it's been insane.
Hey, say your name and where you work.
My name is Puneet, Puneet Kataria. The question I have actually is a continuation of that, and I would love to see different opinions come out. That's fine if you can't agree. But what should be the KPI? What is and what should be the KPI, and how you should measure? And if you can, well, yes, I'm sure the answer is going to be engagement. But how do you measure engagement? If you can make it measurable.
Great, thank you. Engagement measuring.
Do you want to take it? Okay. So I think it depends a lot on what community you're serving. So in my experience in developer relations, I think that you find a kind of different grouping of companies and why they want to have developer communities. One is just that everybody else is doing it and they think they should have it. And that's where you get a lot of people that are like, oh, I have to prove my worth with a dollar amount, because a lot of times they probably don't need it. Like developer marketing, developer relations type things. Or you have the people that need it, like an API. You need education and support and things like that. Or you have a platform. Or you're selling to developers. So if you've got these divergent communities you're speaking to, you're going to have to measure different engagement in a different way, because they're engaging with you differently. So for me as a platform community manager, some of the things and this is something too that I'm really fascinated with all of your opinions and would love to hear it, because I want to make sure that we're not tracking vanity metrics, and that we're not tracking metrics that are going to obscure any one group or class or anything like that. I want to make sure that they are inclusively thoughtful metrics. So, and I don't know the answer to how to do that, so except I've just been trying to ask everybody.
Great.
But yeah, I think one of the things that we measure is like how many people are answering. So I've got this bot actually that scrolls through Stack Overflow and checks, instead of checking like how many times we as a team are answering questions on Stack Overflow, how many people within the community are answering questions, and how many of those questions are right.
When engineers manage community.
Build a bot to do it.
I want to give another engineering answer to this question. So, yeah, I was an engineer like a gazillion years ago. Let's not talk about it. But no, that's so we decided that actually we care about quality of engagement, not quantity. So one of the things we have on the site is we actually give a grade, a rank to every user. And that rank is a factor of the quality of the posts that they wrote, and we take into account time decay. So if you wrote something and people said it's great by upvoting or sharing it, we give you a certain points for that, which is a factor of many, many things. If you want to ask questions, Gaurav, our team lead, is here. You're welcome to ask him. But essentially, think of it, just to simplify it, we determine a rank based on the amount of love you get for what you write, and you lose it over time. So if you were very active, it's going to degrade.
It composts.
And it composts. And we actually have only one parameter or number that we measure ourselves as a company on, and that we report to our investors, which is the total reputation of all the users on PureList combined. And so our goal is to have that number that represents the quality of what you did on the site go up. So reputation is the amount of love, the score, the sum of all the scores you got for everything you've done on the site. And so the total love, the total reputation on the site is the reputation of all our users. The reason that we chose that is that it takes into account everything. How many people signed up so they can post? How many posts we have? How much love is on the site? How many people are not just contributors, but amplifiers, meaning they love, they upvote or share? And how many people view those posts? So really, when you think about it, it takes into account every factor we could have measured combined. But the bottom line is the quality of the site. And the one thing we can say, we may not succeed. So far, we're doing well. But if we ever fail, we can still say, we created a damn good content on the site.
Great. Julian, is there an out-of-the-box set of analytics that comes with the Community Cloud for your customers?
Yeah, we have a number of community management reporting tools available for community managers. And that's actually, thank you for that segue, but because what my response to you is actually going to be really around, kind of the goals of your community. I mean, I think we often talk about community in the form of customer-facing communities for support or to just engage with customers, but your community might be for your franchise owners and helping them collaborate to solve problems.
Cool.
So it really depends on what you're trying to do, and getting back to the actual product aspect of it all. I mean, with our product, you can configure those reports and dashboards in any way that you'd like, so that it might be something around, number of questions and what percentage of them are answered. Or it could be some metric that I've never even thought of, because you are the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, and you're looking to help prevent suicides, and there's some way you're tracking that.
Wow.
So I think it really depends on deciding what the metrics are that matter to you, whether it's for your end business goals or for the actual community goals themselves, because some of our customers could care less if anybody else answers the questions in the community. They just want to be able to quickly answer the customer's questions, and they'll have their support team do it.
Wow.
So it kind of just depends, I think.
Susan, you have a question. Great question. So the question is for top members of your enterprise community. How about rewarding them with access to product managers building the thing they're using? And the roadmap. Ooh, that's a good, juicy benefit. Do you guys do that?
We do. And it's actually funny. When I joined Salesforce, what was that? Yeah, right. Yeah. When I joined Salesforce, I knew that we had an MVP program. And if you're not aware, what we do for our community MVPs is we actually bring them to San Francisco. We obviously have more resources than some companies. We actually fly them out, and we give them the whole VIP experience for about 3 days in San Francisco. They get to meet the product leads. They get to meet the executives. And what blew me away was how much the executives took it seriously.
Yeah.
And you might have the world's most important question in your own mind, but our GM is not available when the community MVPs are in town. And he wants all the product managers to be there as well, because they need to be there at lunch answering the questions, at the mixer, you name it. So yeah, I think it's a huge aspect of what we do with our own community.
One thing I love to tell community managers is don't hog the access to your community. Actually share the access. And not every executive wants to be touching the community like you do, but there are creative ways to think about appropriate times to expose everyone to the community. But you get a lot of love and other stuff, but you get a lot of love from your community or in a relationship. Don't hog the relationship, share it.
Just one quick comment. I think Stack Exchange is a good example.
Great.
In that sense. They open doors for you. As you are a stronger member of the community, you get more authority. You get to be a moderator, a curator, whatever. You have the right to flag posts. You have the right to delete posts and so on. Kind of Wikipedia did the same thing. So I think these are good examples.
Yeah, good.
I'll say also, yeah, advocacy programs are really great. And Salesforce has an amazing advocacy program. It's just the bee's knees. I love it. Influitive also has a lot of content out there about advocacy programs. They do that, but they also have, if you want to build it from scratch, they have a lot of content that's really, really good on that.
Just a quick comment on your question. Sorry to go back in time,
Go for
but
it.
to me, the engagement, obviously, but also is how do you, what's the percentage of people who level up in their journey to become expert? So they start, as a newcomer. How do they become intermediate, and how they go to expert? So to me, that's really what so that means I've done a successful job at providing useful material, and they've learned from those material, and for that reason they're gonna go one level up. And then the gift that keeps on giving is that once they become expert, they will do the same for the newcomers.
Great. Do we have another question? David, do you have a question back there? So I'm going to repeat it into the mic. And the question is that there's been an observation that in the developer communities, there's evidence of some dark behavior. The dark side is happening. There's some evidence of some bad behavior in these communities, like sexism and trolling, and maybe I'll just say editorialized bullying. And the question to the people with larger enterprise communities, are you trying to get rid of that kind of bad behavior on a meta scale, or just in your own community, or both, or what are you doing about that? What, if anything?
Another thing I'm really excited about. Sorry, I'm like shaking with excitement for the question. It's a good question. So we have really lofty goals at Slack. We want to be like the future of work, which is a huge, ridiculous goal. And the way that I see it, if we are trying to build the future of Slack, the future of work on Slack, like that place cannot be built without the voices of incredibly diverse group of people. Like everybody should be able to build on top of Slack. Everybody should be a part of building the future of Slack. And when you have freedom like that, yeah, like you have the freedom to be an asshole. Like, sorry, but it's true. And but the thing is, like, we want the future. Sorry, oh no, we want the future to be better than the past, right? So we are very upfront, like with the code of conduct. I'm actually trying to improve this in our onboarding into our community by like having a bot that welcomes you and teaches you how we treat each other. Like we don't use ableist language. We don't encourage ableist language. What?
Me too. Will you open source all of your bots?
Yes, let's talk. Let's
Great.
talk.
Great.
But yeah. And that's like actually inclusivity is our North Star goal in all of our community strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm a member of many Slack communities, different channels on those multiple communities. And for some of them, certain conduct is okay, and for others it's not. So I promoted an event on one, and I just put it was in the events channel of a community that seemed to be interested in that type of event, and I put @channel, and they ripped me a new one. Whereas I did the exact same thing on the Code for America, which I think is a more important, bigger channel, and everybody was like, great, I'll be there, thank you for telling me. And so I just kind of wanted to know how you guys deal, like number one, it enraged me, and I was like, I started to not, like, I was almost pulling rank, like, listen, I've been doing online.
Since before Taylor Swift sang.
How you guys handle that, and how you would tell community members like about that, and also how to kind of tell the moderators. How do you communicate it? It's a hard problem.
Okay, I'm going to repeat the question. I'm going to summarize and repeat. So for Slack specifically, although I do think it applies broadly, for Slack, if you're a member of a lot of different Slack communities, each of which has a lot of different channels, you behave one way in one and it's okay. You behave the same way in another one and it's not okay. Is there a way to educate broadly about what's kosher inside channels of communities?
Brainwashing. I'm just kidding. But indoctrinating your people through onboarding. So I think, and also embracing vulnerability. Like if you as a community manager or a part of a community that has a culture that you don't really necessarily think is positive, if you want to affect change in that, then like in my experience, like just as a person that's part of communities, I have just defaulted to being as awkwardly honest and vulnerable about stuff and be like, I'm uncomfortable. Like, we need to talk about this. So I actually like accidentally like butt dialed in the middle, like in the announcements channel in all of Slack globally, like in my first week. And just like, like I fell asleep at my keyboard or something. And everyone, we actually have this like kind of delightful way to call each other out. So we raccoon each other. So like you get raccooned and then you feel like shame for a second. But then everybody gets raccooned, so you just like giggle about it. And so I think that if you can help to create a culture that you have together that's like encouraging people to call each other out in a playful way, that's I find that to be really helpful. Delightful hazing.
Hey, nobody hazes Susan Tenby. Send them to me. Raccoon those people.
I think there's also
Somebody raccoon Donald Trump.
Oy vey. All right, Julie.
so I think there's also something to be said about being very upfront about what is acceptable in this area of our community versus another area. So in our own internal employee community, we have a group called the Airing of Grievances Group. And the image for that group is Frank Costanza mid-rage. And the description for the group is come here to, like, you know,
Beautiful.
I forget what the exact wording is. Basically, come here to air your grievances, like, you know, let it all hang out. And this is where you complain about the snacks or silly things or whatever it might be. And not too long ago, someone posted in that group complaining about the Dreamforce app. And they said, I'm having trouble registering my customer, and it's frustrating. I wasted so much time. And the PM who's in charge of that product said, well, you know, you could have phrased that differently, and you could have given us, you know, feedback and this and that and the other. And then somebody else responded and said, you know what? It's the Airing of Grievances group.
Yeah,
And that's
it's
all it
allowed
took.
in here. It's allowed
Because
in here.
you don't need to be defensive. We're allowed
Yeah.
to do that. And you can also go into the developer group for that product and say, hey, guys, I
Be
have
more
some thoughts
constructive.
on how you
That's
could do
right. That there's a place for each one, or you just got to air traffic control
it. Exactly.
where that's appropriate.
But maybe just for proportions, I don't know if many of you know it, but Twitter didn't deal with abuse until they had 500,000 users. That's a big amount of users cursing. So I don't think that it's something you absolutely have to have from day one, even though you have to take into account certain risks, right? When we built our application, we knew it's for security people. We could not screw up security. That would be really ridiculous. But we still take some calculated risks, right? Because nothing is really like bulletproof. So my point is, Twitter really hired the first person, a machine learning expert, to deal with bad language only after they had 500,000 users. I'd say, you know, take a look at your audience, figure your risk, just like in security, really figure your risk and see what are we looking at? Are we looking at losing one user? Yeah, we had one user who told us in a post that she was highly offended by somebody using the F word. And we figured, you know what? There's a lot of reasons to use the F word on our site, and we're going to have to give up on you. Even though I'm really trying to push for women on our site, I was like, I'm going to lose one woman. I have no choice. So yeah, just figure who your audience is and, you know, what's acceptable to you and go with it.
I want to say something on that. I'm sorry, I know I talk a lot, but so I agree mostly, but I also disagree, just because I think that it's, we all as community managers, there unfortunately a responsibility falls on us to make the world a better place by being thoughtful about what we accept. Like, and one of the problems is that we face in tech is that we don't have very inclusive environments, whether that's with disabilities, with, you know, race, with gender, and thinking about these things proactively in the beginning and how you can create and protect those spaces inclusively, I think is very important.
Let's get a final word from you, Victor, and then we got to wrap it up. Protecting the sacred space with Victor.
All right, no pressure. Well, I guess I'll just comment on the trolling. My kind of like response to trolling is don't take the bait. A troll wants you to respond. Don't give that to them. It's actually like, it's just gonna feed the beast and it's gonna get worse. If anything, just let your community jump in. It's always better if, you know, like somebody from the community like answers rather than like an official or like your PR person. So that's it for trolling. But what was the other part?
That was great. That actually goes to one of my favorite maxims for community management. Good place to end. This is my one takeaway, which is this: make every decision for your community as if you were the mayor of Chicago, not the mayor of Mobile, Alabama. So the mayor of Chicago doesn't get drawn in by the trolls. The mayor of Mobile, Alabama might. So, and with that tidbit, I want to say thank you so much to our panelists. This was great. And to Susan Tenby of TechSoup, and to TechSoup itself for hosting us here tonight. You guys have been amazing. I can't wait to connect with all of you next week at CMX. Yes. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Susan.
Thank you. And again, I'm with Caravan Studios, so you guys can follow Caravan Studios. A couple announcements. David is here to talk about CMX.
Okay. Hi, everybody. That was really awesome. Thank you. That was great. So I know you already mentioned CMX, but if you don't know about it, it's next week. Big conference all about this stuff with amazing people like these people. We have people from Slack. We have Google, Apple, Salesforce, Reddit. Who else we got? IDEO. I'm going to be there. Yeah. So it's going to be really cool. We're going to give away a ticket right now. I know everyone's not always down to tweet. So if you want to go, but like you can't afford it or like you really can't be there for some reason, just email me. It's david@cmxhub.com. We're really putting a priority on making sure anyone who needs to be there can be there. So we have volunteer ops. We have scholarships. We always try to make sure everyone can be there. So email me if you can't be there or you just didn't feel like tweeting. But somebody did feel like tweeting. So we have a free ticket going to Alana Leone.
Woo!
Where's Alana? Oh, it's you.
Hey, congratulations!
All right.
Take my
and
workshop on Wednesday.
Yeah. So also Salesforce is hosting a really cool breakfast the day after CMX Summit on the 3rd. At 8:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., I believe. Yeah, we shared it out as well. So yeah, you'll see all the events. There's lots of events before and after and during, and it's gonna be really cool. So can't wait to see you all there.
Awesome. We do
Yay.
want to thank Community Cloud for being a sponsor tonight, as well as Lithium, Iron Cactus,
And Higher Logic.
Higher Logic.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thanks. Good night. Thank you, Shira. Thank you. And thank
My
you, speakers.
pleasure. I love you guys.